What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, we have made it to week 1. It is that time of year again. This is our third time doing this, third year at the podcast. We're going to pick some games. But this week, there's too many good games. So we're going to do 2 picks episodes where we're going to pick our games against the spread. We'll have 7 games in this episode. We'll have 7 games in our next episode. Man, I'm pumped. College football is here, man.
Yeah, like week 0 was cool and all, whets the appetite. But honestly, it's one of those things where, they bring out a huge platter of food, but there's a million people there. And so you have like one cheese stick and all you are is just more hungry and upset that it's not, So here we go. We've got the entrees are here. We're ready to watch. It's such a great week. And then there's so many Thursday games, and we just had to get the week started off early by getting some of these early picks so that we can get into the later ones later in the week. So it is in kind of a sequential, or I guess sequential order, or, everything like that. So we'll be, picking games from Thursday, a game from Friday, or I guess 2 games from Friday, and then 3 games from Saturday from the early slate.
And then we'll do the rest of the Saturday games in our next episode. And we got a Sunday night game and a Monday night game. So we're going to pick all of those. We'll have more picks coming, again, against the spread. So, Daniel, let's do what we've been waiting a year to do, my friend. Let's make some picks. It's time. The extra points picks. We're going to take the extra points. Or we're going to lay the extra points. No, excuse me. We're going to lay the extra points or take the extra points. There you go. I said it right. But extra points picks, one of our segments we've had from the beginning. Look, picking winners and losers is mostly easy. Well, in a weekend like this, it might be a little more difficult. Early in the season is more difficult, but picks against the spread, that's what takes some skill. You and I were both above 50% last year with our picks. You ended up beating me last season. I won in year 1. You won in year 2. Here we go. Year 3, we'll see who breaks the tie in our extra points picks segment. So let's start with our first game. Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, UCF and Boise State. Again, in a weekend like this game is just flying under the radar. And in any other weekend, this will be a top 3 game. And, neither team is ranked. And so, again, that's why it's not being talked about as much. But these are 2 premier Group of 5 programs. At the Bounce House in Orlando, UCF is favored by 5.5 at home. And this line's actually come down to 5 since we picked this line. We'll keep it at 5.5. Daniel, where are you going with this game?
This game it's great because it's 2 new head coaches. So you can go off of what you think last year from these guys, but you're going to have two new teams based on what the coaches are going to do. And this is, for an early season matchup, I mean, you mentioned that these are 2 of the premier Group of 5 teams. Jacob, they could be playing week 1 for a berth in a New Year's Six Bowl. So this could be, because Boise for years was the Group of 5 representative, and then it switched to kind of the UCF era, and then recently it's just been the American Conference in general. So that's something I'm wanting to watch for. But I think the more I look at this game, the more I just think that Gus Malzahn and Dylan Gabriel and just this UCF team is set up for success. They've got some big transfers in there on defense. I really like Travis Williams, their defensive coordinator. I think he's going to be a big help for them. He was linebackers coach at Auburn while Gus was there. I think he's going to do a good job recruiting. He was a high riser. He had a job for like 3 weeks with Miami as their linebackers coach after Gus was fired from Auburn. So definitely something to keep in mind there. I think that's an area where UCF may have not been very known for in the past, where you've got one of these young guys who's very hungry on the defensive side of the ball, and he's in a hotbed for recruiting in an area. So I like Devod Wilson, a safety / cornerback for UCF. He transferred from Georgia. And then you got Bryson Armstrong, linebacker, transfer from Kennesaw State, All-American, fifth-year senior, going to be an inside linebacker starter actually outside linebacker starter for the UCF Knights. So give me UCF. I'm going to lay the 5.5. I think one touchdown is fine because Boise is coming all the way from Idaho to the bounce house in Orlando. So I like the home team, and I'm going to lay the 5.5.
You ever been to Orlando in the summer?
Oh, yeah.
How about coming to Orlando from Idaho in the summer, where it's going to be, 85 and humid, even at night? It's a night game, so it'll cool down a little bit.
Baked potatoes is what I'm telling you. All right.
That's right. So, here's the thing. Boise State has regressed as a program since Chris Peterson left. They have. That's not debatable. They absolutely have. What about Boise State scares me? Completely new staff. And it's a green staff, a first-time head coach in Andy Avalos, whereas UCF's new staff is not really a new staff. This is a staff that's been around, and a head coach that's been he's coached in a national championship game, both as an assistant and won, and as a head coach and lost back in 2013. This is the only coach in the country that's beaten Nick Saban 3 times and Gus Malzahn. We've talked enough about this offseason. Firing Gus Malzahn was a mistake. I'm a big Gus Malzahn fan, and we talked about it in a previous episode. I know David Cobb has mentioned the offense being worse off with Gus. An offense that averages over 500 yards a game, he's saying is going to average in the 300s because that's what Gus's offense typically do. But you mentioned it. UCF's defense is going to be much improved. Gus Malzahn does not get enough credit for how good the defenses were consistently at Auburn. Not just when Kevin Steele was there. Consistently, Auburn had really good defenses, really good defensive line play, recruited a ton of good guys. And so I think Gus Malzahn will be successful over time at UCF. I think it starts this year, and it starts in game 1. UCF is already more talented than Boise State. They've got better players in the field. They're playing at home. Gus is going to be loose and have some fun. I think the pressure at Auburn may have caused some of those coaching mistakes, and they're being compared to Nick Saban in Alabama when you're in the same state as that program, and that's unfair because everyone falls short when you're being compared to Nick Saban in Alabama. So I will lay the points here at the UCF with 5.5. Again, this is a lot more of a state of the program, roster and coaching matchup for me, especially with 2 new staffs and this early in the season. We don't know a whole lot, but what I do know is that Dylan Gabriel is a beast. This offense has put up mad numbers. Even if Gus takes the yardage down a little bit, I think the defense is going to take a step forward. So I will lay the points at UCF with you. Give me the Knights. Go Knights.
How about this? How many Auburn fans do you think are actually going to be watching, keeping eyes on this game? Because, yeah, obviously their former coach, Gus Malzahn, is their coach now, is coaching UCF, but their coach just came from Boise. So, hey, this was his old team. There might be a sneaky revenge factor too for Gus to be like, hey, I'm better than this guy that you fired me for. Let me go put it on Boise. It's almost like the 6 degrees of separation. So it's not quite that, but you could point to it. There's a familiarity there.
I love it. The other Thursday night game we'll talk about, Big Ten matchup. Hey, credit the Big Ten. They've created some amazing week 1 matchups. Several of them are on here on our slate. First one being Minnesota is hosting Ohio State. Josh Payton has highlighted this. Ohio State has a young roster. And, the Big Ten, no fans last year. So with a new quarterback for Ohio State, this will be their first time playing with a full capacity crowd as a visiting team. Early night game. Yeah, the Buckeyes are favored by 14 on the road against Minnesota. Danny, what are your thoughts on this game?
I think if this was a home game, that I feel like Ohio State would get more than 3 points swayed in their favor. That's typically the number is 3 points for if you're at home or away. I think that this number is low. I think that Ohio State, obviously most people are going to come in and say they're the better team you look at the team talent composite rankings that just came out in 24/7 Sports, Ohio State's third in the country, and they're not far off the pace of Georgia and Alabama for the top spots. So I think that we kind of there's one thing we have to do here with the preseason or at this week one is we have to rely on what our preseason told us, and I'm really high on Ohio State as are you. I think that in this game, I I would be willing to, if there was some sort of you can do the lines at halftime or things like this. I could see Ohio State starting slow. So that's where I would probably bet this one close. But I do think that Ohio State will hit their stride and kind of take off in the late second quarter and then throughout the second half. So I think at worst, Ohio State's walking away with a 21-point victory. So give me the Buckeyes. I'll lay the 14.
For me, the question is for Minnesota, and a lot of teams had COVID issues last year. We've given several teams an excuse for last year. Is Minnesota one of those teams? Which one is more likely to be Minnesota? 2019 Minnesota or 2020 Minnesota? Which one is a clearer picture of who this program is? And I'm not quite sure. I am sure of one thing. I'm sure of who Ohio State is. And this is a team that is, again, this is his third recruiting cycle for Ryan Day at Ohio State, recruiting at a level that Urban Meyer never had at Ohio State. That's saying something. So talented roster, which you mentioned, the most talented wide receiver group in the country, one of the most talented running back rooms in the country. I mean, we said C.J. Stroud's going to win the Heisman Trophy. We picked Ohio State to win the national championship. So again, I'm laying the points with Ohio State. I know 14's a lot. I'm with you in that this could be a game. It's a 10-point game at halftime or even closer. But when you got as many guys as Ohio State does, that defensive line is going to smother Minnesota's offensive line as well. Tanner Morgan has not looked the same since losing his receivers. And he lost another one this past offseason. So I think he's a good quarterback. I just think Ohio State's going to be way too much for this team. I know it's early. I know it's on the road. But, yeah, I'll lay the 14 with Ohio State on the road in Minnesota. Friday night. This is a game I am really excited about for the environment. I think this will be the first unbelievable environment that we see, and that is in Blacksburg, Virginia. Virginia Tech is hosting the North Carolina Tar Heels. This is a game that North Carolina pulled away late last year. It was an exciting game to watch last year if you like offense. Pumped for this environment. North Carolina on the road, 5.5-point favorites. Where are you going with Virginia Tech and UNC?
Yeah, this one, I'll be honest, there's games that I come into where I want to pick it one way because that would be a way that could lead to a more interesting outcome, whether it be the season or just the weekend sometimes. I really like Virginia Tech is cool. Virginia Tech is really cool when they're good, when Lane Stadium is rocking. We've talked about just how that atmosphere is, and it will still be rocking because this will be week one and they wouldn't have lost any games yet. But, I think you and I are both on the same page where we have severe questions about Justin Fuente. Now, Mac Brown has this great track record from years past, and then he's already kind of turned this team around in 2 years. North Carolina is a quick favorite for most people for the Coastal Division this year. So I do see where people would lean, just their top 10 team, just hammer this, lay the points, that kind of thing. You and I both kind of pumped the brakes a little bit with their offense, with all the playmakers that they lost. They lose their top 4 receiving targets from last year, top 2 receivers, top 2 running backs. It's tough to just replace that right out of the gate. Sam Howell will be impressive. I do think that this game is more about North Carolina than it is about Virginia Tech. If North Carolina comes in and does what they're capable of doing, I don't think that this is close. I think this is probably a 2-touchdown win. If North Carolina stubs their toe and can't complete passes and becomes one-dimensional, and the crowd gets into it and it becomes a field position game. That's what I'm trying to say. Field position game and things like that. I think that will go into Virginia Tech's favor. But typically when those games happen, you're still looking at who's the better coach and who's going to lead their team in crunch time, and I still would lean Mac Brown, not Mac Jones, Mac Brown. I would lean Mac Brown's way in this game. I just think that he's got the pedigree. I think he's got the foresight. I think that Phil Longo is a great offensive mind. I think he will scheme some things open for the wide receivers. ESPN recently selected Josh Downs, who's a wide receiver, as I guess it was Kirk Herbstreit selected him. He's going to be a breakout star at wide receiver. So, if I'm looking at what the national publication says and I look at what Kirk Herbstreit says, I would hope that someone like that breaks through. I know I've said all of this. I'm going to lay the points because I just simply don't trust Virginia Tech to be there the whole game. I think that they can give them a game. I think that there's a lot more factors that have to sway into Virginia Tech's favor for this to come out on their side. I think that North Carolina can maybe play their B or C game and still get out of here with at least a 7-point victory, which would cover the spread.
I'm with you. This one's short and sweet for me. I'm selling all my stock in Virginia Tech. North Carolina is a team I'm buying stock in. So Virginia Tech, the highlight of their team last year was their run offense. Their run offense was actually pretty explosive. Both of those pieces are gone. Hendon Hooker is a big part of that running offense. Khalil Herbert as well. Both of those players gone now. Of course, Hendon Hooker to Tennessee, Khalil Herbert to the NFL. The environment's going to be sick, but North Carolina is better at every position than Virginia Tech. Like up and down the roster, they're better. They beat this team 56-45 last year in Chapel Hill. So 1-11. The defense should be much improved for North Carolina this year, even if the offense regresses a little bit, especially up front on defensive line. And that's where I think like the running game Virginia Tech had last year will be stopped by North Carolina. And so, yeah, at only 5.5 points, I think UNC is at least a touchdown better than Virginia Tech, even in Lane Stadium. But can't wait for that environment. It'll be a fun 5 minutes before UNC jumps out all over this game. All right, we're 3 for 3 so far. Let's see if this one will shake things up. We're now to Saturday, big noon kickoff. Don't know why the noon slate, but, it's whatever. Fox is having a Big Ten matchup. This is the Big Ten game of the week. I'm ranking this as the second most exciting game of the week, and that is Wisconsin and Penn State. The Badgers are hosting Penn State in week 1 in Madison at Camp Randall, and they're 4.5-point favorites at home against Penn State. These are two teams that COVID really affected last year. Both have very high hopes, and they get to really see where, this will be a great gauge for both teams in week 1. So where are you going with Wisconsin and Penn State? And actually, I'm sorry, I skipped over a game. I'm looking at you now. Let's not go there yet. How about Friday night again? Michigan State and Northwestern.
Now, this one will whet your appetite for Penn State, Wisconsin.
That's my bad.
It's okay. I was like, wait a second. He just said some words I wasn't expecting. It's fine. We're gonna come back to it regardless.
You know what? That didn't get the setup it deserved. All right, Michigan State and Northwestern. Pat Fitzgerald, he's been Northwestern since they built the school, and Michigan State, year 2 of Mel Tucker, came in and kind of overachieved last year at Michigan State. Both teams have high hopes for this year. Northwestern wants to get back to the Big Ten championship. Michigan State wants to get to a bowl game. This is a great week 1 matchup. Michigan State's hosting Northwestern, 3-point road favorites in East Lansing. Daniel, thoughts on Michigan State, Northwestern?
Yeah. So last year, Mel Tucker came in, not even late. It was beyond late when he became the head coach. So we talked about this being year 0 for a lot of schools. And really, he was the one we pointed out and said he's really in like year -1 or -2. It felt like just because he's so, he was so behind everything. He had limited scholarship, players and stuff like this, and just they squeaked out a win last year against Northwestern. So against a pretty good Northwestern team. So I think that you take that and you bring it to this year. It's at Michigan State. Typically the winds would blow in the direction of Michigan State for me. I would say, okay, well, they won the game on the road last year by 9 points. They're at home. They get 3 points. why not pick Michigan State? I think that there's enough that was lost by Northwestern to make this a good matchup in week one. If this was later in the season, I would actually probably I don't know. We will see. I feel like I might lean Northwestern then, but I feel like Michigan State. We're going to see a jump in this team. Mel Tucker, I do believe in him as a head coach. This will be his first time being a second year head coach. So he went to Colorado for a year, turned the program around a little bit, and then he came to Michigan State late. And then he had an okay year last year. COVID year is weird for everybody. I look for him as a head coach to really take a step forward and for this team to really show a lot more buy-in and for Michigan State to start working back towards being, another viable option in the Big Ten East. So part of that is going to be taking care of a team like Northwestern. 5 years ago, you would expect Michigan State to probably win this game handily. We've had a different view of them the past couple of years. So this is where I think they start to inch back. I like Michigan State to win outright, but I'm going to get 3 points. So I'm going to go ahead and take them. Northwestern starting Hunter Johnson at quarterback. We saw what he did a couple of years ago. Not that players can't improve and get better, things like this. I just don't feel great about it. I feel like it was kind of they settled rather than they were excited about their quarterback. They settled for who they had.
I'm also going Michigan State +3. This is one of the ones I thought we'd be different on.
I was hoping we were different
preseason,
somewhere.
We were pretty high Northwestern. I think this is more of a selling stock Northwestern to me buying Michigan State in this matchup. I think Michigan State's capable, and that's why it's only a 3-point spread, obviously. But, I mean, Pat Fitzgerald typically wins these close matchups, and he does super well against the spread. So that's a factor. We picked Northwestern to be pretty good this season, but then Hunter Johnson was named the starter at quarterback. We've seen what he can do. It's not good. He was the quarterback for the worst offense in football in 2019. Cam Porter, their star running back, out for the season, gone. Offensive lineman Zachary Franks, their best offensive lineman, he's going to be out for several weeks. So not great going into a game where you're facing a Michigan State team that has some grit and a coach wants to prove something. So, yeah, I think Michigan State can win this game straight up. I'm getting points at home, so I'll take the points with Michigan State. Give me Michigan State +3 in this matchup. Now let's go to my second favorite game of the weekend, which I've already introduced, Wisconsin and Penn State in Madison, big noon kickoff on Saturday. Daniel, where are you going with this one?
So this one is less obvious as far as what I'm going to what we would normally select, because you and I were both high on Penn State returning back to what we expect Penn State to be versus what they were last year. Last year was an anomaly. That's not who they are. We do expect them to be better. But, man, it's tough when you run up against Wisconsin in week one, who is going to have one of the best defenses in the Big Ten, if not the nation, has a really good returning starting quarterback in Graham Mertz that we both believe in, and just a program that is just kind of a few steps ahead as far as consistency goes. Combat that with Sean Clifford, really being very average at quarterback. Honestly, I would pick Penn State to be in this game if Noah Cain wasn't coming off of an injury, because I do feel like that's an X factor where I think they're going to use him, but I don't know. It's tough, the psychology part of it, where I think that by midseason, he'll be a home run threat again. In week one against this defense, I just think they're going to be kind of one-dimensional, and I don't know if Sean Clifford's arm is enough for them offensively. I think Penn State will keep them in the game defensively. I think it'll be close. I was tempted to stick with Penn State with the 4.5, but I'm just going to take Wisconsin because a touchdown does not seem like a crazy amount for them to win by. I actually do like this game also on the under. And that was one I didn't mention from before with Michigan State and Northwestern. Not that we're picking over and under as well, but both of those feel like unders to me. Just the classic kind of Big Ten matchup. But it's week one, and both are kind of it's going to be kind of a tight game. And so I think that everybody's going to play tight and they're going to try not to screw things up. And that's going to lead to just a lower scoring game.
That Michigan State Northwestern under, man, unders in the 40s for the shorties. That's brave, my friend. We finally have something where we're going to have a pick go against each other. Yeah, about time, right? So this is one of those games where I went into it going, oh, Wisconsin laying the points at home, easy, like not a problem at all. Dug in, I'm on the other side now. So very high on both of these teams. That's the thing is, as a fan, this is so fun that this is in week one because Josh Pate described this as one of the biggest, like, changing the fan base's mood kind of games. Like, our opinion of both of these teams is going to change after week one. It shouldn't. If this game ends like 27-24 Wisconsin, that tells me, almost nothing. Like,
they are who we thought they were.
They are, yeah. They could both be really good. And I'm not going to adjust a whole lot in power rating like these teams. So very high on both of these teams. When I ranked them, I have Wisconsin at 7, Penn State at 11. So very, very close in where I think these teams are. Wisconsin is at home. They do have the better quarterback. Graham Mertz, his ceiling is the roof, to quote Michael Jordan. Very, very high ceiling. They're at home, and Camp Randall is going to be rocking on Saturday. Like that is a great environment for college football. But Penn State has a chance to have a much more explosive offense than they have in years past. With new offensive coordinator Kurt Shiraka, if he's developed, is a big word there. If he has developed Sean Clifford at all, this offense is a chance to be really explosive. The offensive line's gonna be great. The running back room is finally healthy and like stacked. They've got some good guys in that running back room that they lost last year before the season. Receiver's a question for me for Penn State, but again, with the new system, they've got talent. It's just unproven talent. And so can Sean Clifford play well enough in this game against a really good Wisconsin defense to win? I think he can. I think it's going to be a close football game. I think the home field is playing into this line a little bit. And so, on a neutral field, it's probably a 1.5 point spread, which is almost a pick 'em. And so home field could be a huge factor. But in a game that I think is going to be a very close game, I will just take the points because I think both of these teams have the potential to be really, really good. And so I know Wisconsin's at home. It's almost at that pick 'em line with do I want to take the home field advantage or just take the points? I'll take the points, almost a less risk pick here. And I think Penn State can win straight up. I think Wisconsin can win by a touchdown, but I'll take the points in this scenario. Give me Penn State plus 4.5. Then the 3:30, we got the beginning of the 3:30 slate, 2 games left, and then we'll finish the rest on our next episode. So Maryland and West Virginia. This is a fun matchup. Again, not a ranked matchup, but a fun matchup. Out of conference, 2 very comparable programs. They've both been in the ACC at some point. Geography-wise, close in location. Maryland and West Virginia. West Virginia, a 3-point road favorite. Where are you going with this one, Daniel?
Yeah, and this one I think will mean more geographically than we really take into account as well. They're not so far from one another. I think that this one is more difficult as I was digging in and I looked, ESPN FPI has this one split right down the middle. So that is something that I try to take into account, just outcome of the game, take away the point spread and everything. But Maryland is at home, and I almost see this as an offensive team, an offensive matchup versus a defensive matchup. I think West Virginia last year with their number 1 pass defense, that was great. And I think that it is a lot of scheme, but they lose Jamal Adai, their, co-defensive coordinator to Georgia. He's going to be their cornerbacks coach or their defensive backs coach. And then you've got Drashawn Miller, who transferred to Auburn, one of the cornerbacks, and then their slot guy, Tyke Smith, went with Jamal Adai to Georgia. So some of that turnover in the secondary, which was actually their strength defensively, I think that will be a difference maker. I do like Neil Brown as a head coach. I think that if I was picking between the head coaches, I think he has the edge over Mike Locksley. I like Letty Brown as running back. I think that's a guy that can ice a game away, but I'm interested to see if Talia Tagovailoa, Raheem Jarrett, this high-flying offense under Locksley can really go the distance. I'm going to just take a flyer and take Maryland with the points. I'm going to take Maryland +3 and just ride it out because similar like how you described Penn State, where it's a close enough game where you're just going to take the points. Maryland is at home with some points. And if I was being honest with myself, I really would prefer to take the offensive team that I really think is going to be a little more explosive.
3 words, my friend. Wrong team favored. Yeah, you mentioned the best. Now, I think West Virginia has a coaching advantage. Neil Brown, great football coach. Their staff's great. But the best part of their team from a year ago, like you mentioned, is gone. And so what am I relying on with West Virginia? The thing that was the heart of their team gone this year. And so what do I have to rely on? I don't know yet with West Virginia. Maryland, I do know. Locksley's offensive system has already proven they can score some points. They've got their guy at quarterback. And Talia Tagovailoa. I mean, look at this. The Alabama offense with a Tagovailoa at quarterback. That's just a recipe for success, in my opinion. So,
and 5-star wide receivers, Raheem Jarrett.
That's right.
So
Locksley calling plays with a Tagovailoa at quarterback and a 5-star receiver. I've seen that before. It's been really successful. So yeah, I think Maryland wins this game outright. I think the wrong team's favorites. I will take Maryland +3 points. Give them to me. That's fine. Won't need them. Maryland wins outright. Maryland +3. Last game of this picks episode. We'll have one more later on this week. Iowa and Indiana. Again, thank you, Big Ten, for these opening week matchups.
Right.
Very comparable, right? Big Ten West, Big Ten East. It's a 3-point spread. Iowa's a 3-point favorite at home. This is a pick 'em on a neutral field. This is so fun. Daniel, Iowa and Indiana.
Y'all, if you're wondering why we had 2 picks episodes, it's because there's only 2 games on this list that would have made the overall list, and all of these games are worth talking about. This one is one of those that would not have probably made our final cut list if we had to do one episode this week just because of all the great matchups. So it's one that is a sneaky good one. I think that, if you're finding yourself, in a couple blowouts at the 3:30 slate, this is the one to kind of flip over to, or at a minimum have it on a second screen. Indiana is a team that's on the rise as far as program wise. I think that maybe they hit their head on the ceiling of what they could potentially be this past year. I love Tom Allen as a head coach. I just think that there's something to be said about a college coach that has, the players that care so much for him. I think that's going to go a long way for them. You and I are both talked about how we think that Indiana is just going to be a little more of a media favorite or just a public favorite than they really should be. They're going to be favored more rather, than what their on the field presence is going to be. I think this will be a good game. Iowa's defense is really going to be one of the best in the country, and I would be surprised if Indiana is able to go up and down the field on them. I think that Iowa could have the best defense in the Big Ten, and that's if you're still including Ohio State. So we'll see where things go this year. We're looking at, the S&P, not SMP, SP plus. Sorry, Bill Conley, shout out, but they're just highly ranked on the defensive side of the ball. I think that that's going to be a big key for them. They're at home, they're laying points, but I think that they'll be able to kind of control this game. And Indiana is probably going to start taking risks later, and it's going to lead to turnovers and short fields. And that's where Iowa will put this game away. I think it's a 7 to 10 point game in favor of Iowa. So give me the Hawkeyes. I'm going to lay the 3 points.
If Spencer Petras, Iowa's quarterback, gets hurt, there's some people in the Iowa camp that believe like their season's in trouble. Like there's not a lot of depth behind him at quarterback. But it's week 1 and he's healthy. So they're at home. Indiana had a great run last year. I love Tom Allen, great coach. LEO, love each other, great culture there. Culture is not enough in these close games. Kinnick Stadium's going to be full. It's going to be loud. They're going to do the wave, one of the coolest new traditions in college football. Iowa, you mentioned, SU Plus is very high on them. Number 1 preseason ranked defense in the country, the Iowa Hawkeyes. Indiana was one of the luckiest teams in the country last year, both with the amount of turnovers they had, which there's always luck in turnovers. And they won some games where their post-game win expectancy was like below 10%, like that Penn State game. They're a lucky team. Is Michael Penix completely healthy coming off of that injury? I don't know. I'm with you. I think Iowa's defense smothers this Indiana team. I think it's still a close game, but I trust Iowa to win by a touchdown. I like the under in a game like this. Problem is the over-under is in the 40s, so I ain't touching it. But it'll probably be, a 20-14 kind of game, and I'll lay the 3 points with Iowa in this situation.
It's a great uniform matchup.
Great uniform matchup. Love it. The Pittsburgh Steelers and then Indiana. So, I wonder where they got the those uniforms from. No, it's great. Hey, be sure to join us later on this week where we're going to have the rest of our Saturday picks, including Alabama, Miami, Georgia, and Clemson. Then we'll hit that Sunday game, Notre Dame, Florida State, and the Monday game, Ole Miss and Louisville. You can follow him on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. That will do it for this edition of The Extra Point. He is Daniel. I am Jacob.